Hey, Andrew here, one of your top two co-hosts. Well, maybe top three now. Just hopping in to let you know I wasn't able to record this past recording session, so for the next few weeks, I've been replaced by my lovely brother, Jake. Um, so, uh, Unfortunately, as podcasting amateurs, Mom and Jake did not record enough did not record enough intros or outros. I just want to give you a heads up that you might be hearing the same intro and outro with a sort of rough edits for the next couple of weeks. It'll just be a few seconds. Don't have to worry about like skipping past it or anything. I mean, you can if you want to, but just a few seconds. But just want to give you a heads up there because it'll just be a little funky. But anyway, on with the show.
Hi, and welcome to Hypothetically Intentional, where we ask the question, what if we set intentions with everything we do? I'm your host, Michelle, and this is a new guest today.
Yes, hello. I am Jake, one of Michelle's other children.
Come
Who knows how many there will be guesting on the
Oh,
podcast?
on. This is it. No more children. We may have other guests. No more children. And I can say
Maybe.
that
We'll
pretty
see.
confidently.
Yes, you probably can.
Yeah, I feel like I can say that pretty
But
confidently.
are you going to allow people who aren't related to you to guest on the podcast?
I am.
Whoa.
I mean, I don't know how many guests I'll have, but I definitely have. Because so when you're on the podcast, it can be jam, right? Whether Andrew's here or
Not
not.
when Andrew's here.
Well, Jake, Andrew, mom, or Jake, Andrew, Michelle works,
Yeah.
or Jake and mom, Jake and Michelle.
Oh,
So
the
it works either
and.
way. But
Yeah.
then if we throw Dan into the mix, then we get jammed.
And yeah, that's probably not good.
Well,
Four
I'm pretty
people's a
sure that's
lot
going to
on a
happen at some point.
podcast, too.
What's that?
I said four people's a lot on a podcast, too, I feel like.
Well, I didn't
Maybe
necessarily mean
not,
us all
but
together.
okay.
But I feel like we could do three at a time, like three at a time.
Yeah,
Heck, maybe
that
someday
seems
I'll just
doable.
not be here and the three of you can banter.
Whoa.
Whoa, I know that's a lot. So
Mhm.
before we
What
get
about your
started,
legions of fans? They will
say
be
that
sad
again.
if you're not there. Your legions of fans will be sad if you're not here.
You don't think you guys also have legions of fans?
Not yet. This is my first time.
Okay, well, what about Andrew?
Andrew probably has legions of fans.
Yeah, so we got to give that some credit.
That's
You
true.
will
Good
after the
point.
first episode, I guarantee it.
Okay.
So can you tell us a little bit about who you are? I don't know how much of the podcast you listened to, but in the very first like pre-launch,
Mhm.
we just introduced ourselves and kind of said what we're about and what we're passionate about. Would you be willing to do that?
Yeah. I'm Jake. I am older than Andrew, if that helps out at all. But yeah, I am a software developer, like a computer person, I guess. That's kind of something that's grabbed me from a pretty young age. I like to solve problems. I like to use my brain to fix things, I guess. That's kind of fun. Um, and sometimes that translates to more of the things that you do at JID, right? But more often than not, the brain gets in the way a little bit more. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
I feel like I want to know a little bit about some of your hobbies because I know you have some interesting ones, things that I find fun and
right.
fascinating.
Interesting hobbies. Let's see. I like to make cocktails and food. That's usually a way I like to spend, Friday nights or whatever is make a nice dinner and some drinks. I play a lot of games. Like I like to play Andrew and I play Dungeons and Dragons, and I play a lot of Magic the Gathering as well. I try to be pretty competitive at that one, which is fun. Um, what else do I like to do? I like to go for walks. That's not really a hobby, but it's something I like to do. Um, am I missing? Was there one that you were like hoping I would bring up that I haven't?
No, that's great. I
Okay.
mean,
It seems
I
like
was
you were fishing for something.
I wasn't necessarily fishing. I definitely did have like you're making cocktails and food in my mind because I feel like it's
Mhm.
like it's a way you blend your logical mind and your creative side, like they go well together.
Yeah.
It's a way
Mhm.
you can do both. It's not all just logical and linear.
Right.
That's how you dive into your creativity is how it appears to me. And I might be wrong. There might be
No, I
I'm
think
sure there's
that's
more ways, but
reasonable. No, that's definitely a good outlet for that. That and like Andrew and I's D&D sessions are a big one as well. But yeah, the like cooking type stuff is also one of the ways I like to show people that I care about them. So that's where that comes into play.
yeah. It's like one of your love languages,
Yeah.
acts of service, or
Mhm.
even I suppose you could also call that a gift, and even quality time. Like there's a lot that could be
Yeah.
depending on how you show up in the world and how people receive it. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yes, indeed.
So Andrew and I have been bringing like articles or things to the table that we then sort of discuss our thoughts or feelings on the said articles. And
Mhm.
the last one I did, we were only part way through. So it was like
Okay.
10 rules for life, I think is what it was called. 10 rules for being
Yes.
human. That's what it was, right?
Yes.
And I believe we're on rule 6 because
Okay.
rules 1 through 5 were a lot like 3, 4, and 5, or actually probably like 2 through 5 were all about learning and lessons. So we
Mhm.
kind of just packed all those together. But rule
Okay.
6, I actually feel like would be a really fun one to unpack with you
Okay.
specifically. I feel like you and I will dive down this one differently than maybe Andrew and I would. So I actually think it's kind of cool that you're able to be here today and we could maybe unpack the rest of them if that's cool with you.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
So
What
rule
is the
6, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask what the rule was, but
Yeah,
you were already on it.
I was already on it. And you know what we haven't done yet, Jacob? We have not, oh,
Yes,
sorry, Jake.
it's
We have
okay.
not,
Full name reveal. We were saving that for episode 10.
for me to wreck it. Oh my gosh. Um, so
Um,
this rule feels Dr. Seussy to me.
oh boy.
Like it's a little bit of
Okay.
a brainful, but what we haven't done yet is we haven't set an intention. We set an intention
Yes,
with
that
every
is correct.
episode. So
Mhm.
I'm wondering if you would like to set an intention today.
Yeah. I guess off the top of my head here, I didn't necessarily prepare one going into this, but I think I would like to just kind of not really like focus on making good content for a podcast, which I'm sure you love to hear, but instead focus on just kind of seeing how this goes and having a conversation. So,
Yeah, I love that intention.
okay.
Because what that says to me is I guess how I interpret that is you want to show up authentically, not in
Yes.
some sort of way to prove anything or to provide
Right.
anything for the masses, but to simply like show up in your true self together with
Right.
this. Yeah,
Yeah. And what
that is
happens
I love
happens.
that. Yes. That makes me so happy. That is my
Okay.
intention of if I catch myself not doing that on a day to day, I
Mhm.
feel like then I have to catch myself and
Mhm.
reshift because I'm
Yeah, it's like
really about
your
being present
whole
and being
life,
me.
right? Yeah. So
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
makes
I'm not
sense.
interested in tucking into a box or showing up in some kind
Well,
of
and
way.
especially with like what you do for work, it's like if you're putting on a facade the whole time, like not only will that not be like serving your clients as well, but it'll also be like really, really exhausting because you kind of don't get a break from that then, you know? So,
Yeah, exactly. That actually led my brain to a different place, which I'm
oh
wondering if we
yes.
can dive into before we go into these rules. Like maybe we'll have an
Okay.
episode where we talk about some things first.
Mhm.
Because when
Yeah.
you said that, I had this recall of, and I was actually just watching, I did a choose yourself for kids, like interview
Mhm.
class with a parent. And I spoke about how I parented, when you kids were little, when I was not in this world of personal growth and development and healing, and then how that evolved and shifted to a point where you actually said to me, like, Mom, you've changed and it's good. Whew. And it like made me cry in a good way, but it was like, whoo. I'm just wondering if you are interested in diving into that a little bit, of speaking to like what you meant by that. We never really unpacked it, and you don't have to if you don't want to on the podcast. But I have two questions. What, if you could just elaborate more on like what you noticed on that. And then what I had said in the class was that I wonder what you kids' perception or perspective would be on how you think I might have parented differently if me now parented you when you were little, and how that might have impacted you. I don't know. That's a big question. It's a little bit terrifying one for me, if I'm being honest, because there's like, I have some guilt and shame around like the yelling that I did and the impatience that I had, knowing now that I have more patience and less yelling. So that's my truth and my honesty.
I think that's something you should be proud of and not ashamed of. I will, and let me know if I'm like getting too into it here, but I will do my best. I think like I guess growing up, there was a little bit more of, so the first thing I should note is that I was not a very easy child to parent, specifically as I got into my teenage years. But I think what you alluded to a little bit is like, there was more like, I wouldn't say you like yelled at us a lot, but you were definitely, a lot less patient than you are now. And there was a little bit of like almost that, like if we didn't know what you wanted or like do something the way that you wanted, I sometimes felt like would be like you would be disappointed or upset, right? Which like is kind of a reasonable reaction if someone doesn't do something the way you wanted, but it was in a way that was like maybe a little bit more like I felt like I was trying to anticipate things that you wanted us to do, right? And when I didn't do that well, it like it was like you would be not very patient. And that has like completely gone out the window in more recent years, partly because I'm sure we have grown up. But it's not like we've grown up and like now we anticipate your every need and you like don't ever have to be mad about that. It's like now we grew up and like you grew up too, and like you don't you're more understanding of the fact that there are a lot of different ways to approach problems and that we can kind of take our own paths when we do so, in a way that was less present before, I guess I would say. Does that sound about right to you?
Yeah.
Self-evaluation.
Yeah. And it was interesting. Some of the things you were describing that you felt aren't that different from how I felt growing up. Because I desperately wanted to like make my parents proud and happy. And so I would do whatever I could to tuck into that box. So like I was having empathy with you you in that part of it. And then if I was reflecting on like how you were describing how I showed up as a parent, what I heard was control. Like I liked control of things being done a certain way.
I don't think is news to either of us.
No, it's not news to either one of us. I definitely needed control to feel safe. And I just think that's it in a nutshell. I needed control to feel safe and to feel like, to set us all up for success is like probably what I was telling myself, but it was so the opposite of that. Trying to tuck you into my box of the way I would do things is just super not the way that makes things feel.
Right. And like, I mean, I don't know if you remember me learning how to cook. I would always ask you like, which dish should I use for this? Or like, which seasonings go in here or whatever. And like now, when I do any of those things like cooking or cleaning, even at other people's houses, like I just kind of do it.
Yeah. And I think there's something to be said about like you're stepping into someone else's home and they like done a certain way. And so we show up respectfully in that. But what we're talking about with our growing up, and I'm just going to keep it in our home, is that like for a while I had a a preconceived notion or a preset way that I demanded it to be done versus like just you respecting, you know what I mean? It felt a little more rigid, I
There's a
guess.
difference. Yeah, like some of the things are like, does he like the forks pointed up or pointed down or at the cabin or whatever? I don't know if that was specifically happened, but like
Yeah, yeah,
things like that. That it's like beyond the bounds of like, I'm not going to go into your house and like rearrange your kitchen, but
yeah,
like there should be some like flexibility. I'm not going to do things the exact same way as you do them necessarily, and for the most part, that's fine.
yeah.
But like growing up, that was like more scary, I guess.
And when you talk about cooking, that's fascinating to me too, because I think about like there were so many, and I think about like the duality and the like lose-lose situation I put you kids in some ways, because like there was a part of me, like I do remember I was a preschool teacher, right? So I had this thing where I
Mhm.
wanted you guys to be critical thinkers and to be able
Yeah.
to like make your own choices and do all that. But then like I obviously wasn't building that environment if you weren't sure which dish I wanted you to use versus which, but you know what I mean? And it maybe
Right.
wasn't that extreme, but I do think
Well,
it's,
and yeah, like critically thinking about maybe the wrong things at
yeah.
times of like what will make mom happy instead of what makes sense to do here.
Yeah, exactly. Because I
Um,
do remember, instances where it was like, just in general, I don't remember a specific instance, but I do know, like, when you
mhm.
kids were little, it was like, why are you asking me all the time? Just make your own choice. Use your brain. I know you have one and I know it would work in this instance. But like when
Right.
I look at that now, like those feelings, the reason you were asking those questions is because you didn't want me to get mad or frustrated or like
Mhm.
tell you were doing it wrong, which is like,
Right.
that's what I mean when I feel guilt and shame. It's like there's a piece of me that's like, oh, like you felt that way. That sucks that I made you feel that way. And also like I loved what you said. You said something about like, we grew up and so did you. It's like we grew up together. And to be fair, I
Right.
think every parent and child does that. Like, cause we learn
Mhm.
as you learn and we learn how it's a brand new relationship. It's a brand new, like, how do we communicate? How do we figure out how you tick? I remember Yaya said to me once when you were like 2, she said, Michelle, I just have never seen anybody reason with a 2-year-old before. I just don't understand how you can reason with a toddler. And she was thinking that I did that. And I said, honestly,
Mhm.
Mom, I think Jake taught me that because if I could make things connect logically for you, like if A, then B, you were good and you just like
Mhm.
flowed through life great. But if there was not the logical connection for you, it was a tantrum every time. So I just learned like, oh, Jake just needs me to make it make sense. And if I can make it make
Right.
sense, then he feels safe and good and happy. And we're all, peace, love, and
Yeah.
happiness. But I never even realized that I was reasoning with you because I
Mhm.
didn't see it that way. We were just engaging how we were communicating with each other the way it worked best. And she,
Mhm.
as an outsider, like saw that when she came to visit, like,
Yeah.
Jake thinks logically and you reason with him and it works. And that's a toddler. And I didn't think that was possible. you know?
I mean, I'm sure I didn't always have the right logical pathways, but as
Yeah. But
long as
also
something
it
was
helps that I
there.
taught preschool, right? So I knew how to
Yeah.
communicate in that way. I mean,
Mhm.
I had experience and years of experience with that. So that made it helpful.
Yeah.
Anyway, this was great. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to do the whole, please give us a like and a subscribe and a follow.
Yeah.
And you can find us at jaidewellness.com, JAIDEE wellness.com. Social media pages. You can look for my personal Michelle Albers ones as well. And I really appreciate you being here with us today, Jake. Thank you.
Yes, you
Then
can't
we
find me
say,
anywhere. I'm not really on socials, but that's okay.
he
I'll be
can find
back
you
at some
through
point,
me
I'm
if you
sure.
need. You will be back.
That's true.
All right.
Yes.
So then we say bye, be you every day.
Bye.